Look closely. What do you see when you peer into the depths of these eyes? Two photographs, separated by time, stare back at you. They are more than just images. They are windows into two very different lives. The first, a faded Polaroid, captures a young girl with bright eyes and a shy smile. Her innocence is palpable, her future unwritten. This is Mary Day, frozen in time at the tender age of 8. A moment captured forever, a snapshot of youthful exuberance. Her hair is in pigtails, a hint of gap-toothed innocence in her grin. She embodies the carefree spirit of childhood. It's the kind of photo that sits on a mantle, a silent promise of a life yet to unfold, a cherished memory, a beacon of hope. The second photograph is jarring in its contrast. It's a stark reminder of the passage of time and the toll it can take. Taken over 2 decades later, it shows a woman in her early 30s. Her face tells a story of its own, one of struggle and endurance. Her eyes, once sparkling with youthful naivete, are now clouded with a weariness that speaks of hardship. They are the eyes of someone who has seen too much. Her smile, if you can call it that, doesn't reach her eyes. It's a smile that hides more than it reveals, a mask worn out of necessity. This woman claims to be Mary Day, but the years have etched a question mark on her face. Is it possible? Could she really be the same person? Could this woman, bearing the weight of an unknown past on her shoulders, truly be the same girl from the Polaroid? The question lingers, heavy and unresolved. The resemblance is there, faint but undeniable. It's like looking at two sides of the same coin, yet something feels off. Yet, something doesn't quite align, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong space. The pieces are there, but they don't fit together seamlessly. The mystery of Mary Day hinges on this dissonance, this unsettling feeling that something isn't quite right. It's a puzzle that begs to be solved, a story that demands to be told. Mary Day's childhood home was not a haven of warmth and laughter. Located on the outskirts of a sleepy town, it held secrets as dark and impenetrable as the woods that encroached upon its backyard. Neighbors rarely saw Mary or her siblings, and when they did, the children bore the marks of neglect. Bruises hidden beneath long sleeves, eyes that darted nervously, a silence that spoke volumes. Their mother, a woman worn down by life and bad choices, was a recluse in her own right. Whispers circulated about her volatile temper, her penchant for alcohol, and a string of men who drifted in and out of their lives just as quickly as they disappeared. Mary, the eldest, bore the brunt of her mother's frustrations. She became a shadow, flitting through the halls of their dilapidated home, her presence barely acknowledged. One incident recounted by a former classmate paints a particularly disturbing picture. Mary had arrived at school, her face swollen and bruised. When questioned, she mumbled about an accident, her eyes downcast. The teachers, though concerned, were used to seeing such things from children living in homes like Mary's. Their silence, however well-intentioned, only served to further isolate the young girl. The circumstances surrounding Mary Day's disappearance are as murky as the river that snaked its way through the woods behind her house. The dense forest, with its thick canopy and shadowy undergrowth, seemed to hold its secrets tightly, refusing to give up any clues about what might have happened to the young girl. The river, often shrouded in fog, added an eerie atmosphere to the already unsettling mystery. It was the summer of 1981, a sweltering July that seemed to amplify the tension already simmering in their small town. The heat wave was relentless, with temperatures soaring and the air thick with humidity. The small town, usually quiet and uneventful, was now a cauldron of unease and suspicion. People whispered behind closed doors, and the oppressive heat seemed to make everyone more on edge. Mary, then 8 years old, was last seen by a neighbor walking towards the edge of the woods, her silhouette swallowed whole by the dense foliage. She was a curious child, often exploring the boundaries of her small world, but this time, she ventured too far. The neighbor, an elderly woman, recalled seeing Mary's bright red dress disappear into the shadows, a sight that would haunt her for years to come. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The initial panic and frantic searches gave way to a slow, agonizing wait. Time seemed to move differently for Mary's family and the community, each passing day a reminder of her absence. The seasons changed, but the pain and uncertainty remained constant. Seasons changed, but the question of what happened to Mary Day lingered like a stubborn stain. It was a question that refused to fade, no matter how much time passed. The community, once hopeful for her return, began to lose hope. Missing child posters, once vibrant and full of promise, became tattered and forgotten, much like the case itself. What was unusual, almost shocking, was her mother's reaction, or lack thereof. She seemed detached, almost indifferent to her daughter's disappearance. Neighbors noticed her sitting in her living room, staring blankly out of the window, as if waiting for something that would never come. Her distant look and emotionless demeanor raised many questions and suspicions. She never reported Mary missing. There were no frantic calls to the police, no desperate pleas for help, no photos plastered on milk cartons. It was as if she had accepted Mary's disappearance as an inevitable part of life, a tragic event that required no intervention. This lack of action was baffling to the community and law enforcement alike. No frantic calls to the police, no desperate pleas for help, no photos plastered on milk cartons. The usual signs of a community rallying to find a missing child were conspicuously absent. It was as if Mary Day had simply ceased to exist, her absence deemed insignificant, even expected. The silence was deafening, and the lack of urgency was disturbing. It was as if Mary Day had simply ceased to exist, her absence deemed insignificant, even expected. Her room remained untouched, a silent testament to her existence. Faded pictures of her were quietly removed from frames, and her belongings were slowly packed away, as if erasing her from memory would ease the pain of her loss. The police, when finally alerted to Mary's disappearance by a concerned teacher, treated it as a low-priority case. Runaways were not uncommon, especially from troubled homes like Mary's. The initial investigation was lackluster, with officers showing little interest in pursuing leads or conducting thorough searches. The case was quickly filed away, another statistic in a growing list of unsolved disappearances. Runaways were not uncommon, especially from troubled homes like Mary's. The prevailing theory was that she had run off, seeking refuge with a relative or simply disappearing into the anonymity of a larger city. This assumption allowed the authorities to close the case quickly, without delving deeper into the more sinister possibilities. The prevailing theory was that she had run off, seeking refuge with a relative or simply disappearing into the anonymity of a larger city. This theory, while plausible, did little to comfort those who knew Mary. They couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister had occurred, that her disappearance was not a simple case of a runaway child. The investigation, if you could call it that, was perfunctory at best. A few cursory interviews, a brief search of the surrounding woods, and then silence. The lack of effort was glaring, and it seemed as though the authorities were more interested in closing the case than finding Mary. The community's trust in law enforcement waned, and the hope of finding Mary alive diminished with each passing day. A few cursory interviews, a brief search of the surrounding woods, and then silence. The search parties, initially large and hopeful, dwindled in size and frequency. The woods, once thoroughly combed, were abandoned, left to reclaim their secrets. The community, once united in their search, began to fracture, each person dealing with the loss in their own way. The case of Mary Day, like so many others, grew cold. It became another unsolved mystery, a cold case file gathering dust in a forgotten corner of the police station. The community moved on, but the memory of Mary Day lingered, a haunting reminder of a little girl who vanished without a trace. For almost 2 decades, the mystery of Mary Day's disappearance lay dormant, a ghost story whispered amongst the town's residents. The tale of a young girl who vanished without a trace had become a part of the town's folklore, a chilling reminder of the unknown lurking in their midst. Parents would often warn their children to be home before dark, invoking Mary's name as a cautionary tale. The old day house, with its overgrown yard and dilapidated structure, stood as a silent sentinel to the past, a place where time seemed to have stopped. Then, in the spring of 1999, a construction crew arrived at the old day property. The town had decided it was time to move forward, to erase the haunting memories associated with the place. The crew, unaware of the house's dark history, set about their task with the usual efficiency, their machines rumbling to life and breaking the long-held silence. The house, long abandoned, was slated for demolition, the land repurposed for a new development. Blueprints for modern homes and manicured lawns promised a fresh start, a new chapter for the community. Yet, as the bulldozers moved in, the past refused to be buried so easily. As the workers began excavating the backyard, their shovels struck something hard, buried deep beneath the earth. The sound of metal against an unyielding object brought the work to a halt. Curiosity piqued, the crew gathered around, their hands brushing away the soil to reveal what lay hidden. It was a small, child-sized shoe, Its once bright red color now faded to a dull pink. The sight of it sent a shiver down their spines. This was no ordinary find. It was a relic of a life interrupted, a silent witness to a story that had yet to be fully told. Next to it, a tattered piece of fabric, too decomposed to identify but undeniably from a child's garment. The fabric, once vibrant, now lay in tatters, a ghost of its former self. It was clear that these items had been buried for a long time, hidden away from the world. The discovery sent a chill through the town, reawakening the ghosts of a past many had tried to forget. Whispers spread like wildfire, and soon, everyone was talking about Mary Day again. The old fears and suspicions resurfaced, casting a shadow over the community. People gathered in small groups, their faces etched with worry and curiosity, as they speculated about what else might be uncovered. The police were called in, their investigation now fueled by the grim possibility that Mary Day had not run away, but had met a far more sinister fate. The backyard, once a place of innocent play, was now a potential crime scene. Yellow police tape cordoned off the area, and detectives moved in with a sense of urgency, determined to uncover the truth. The backyard became a scene of frantic activity. Forensic teams meticulously sifted through the dirt, their faces grim as they unearthed more bone fragments, too small and degraded to definitively say whether they belonged to a human, let alone a child. The air was thick with tension, each new find adding to the growing sense of dread. Forensic teams meticulously sifted through the dirt, their faces grim as they unearthed more bone fragments, too small and degraded to definitively say whether they belonged to a human, let alone a child. The painstaking process was slow and methodical, each fragment carefully catalogued and examined. The hope was to find something, anything that could provide a clue to Mary's fate. The medical examiner's report was inconclusive. Despite their best efforts, the evidence was too fragmented, too degraded by time to yield any definitive answers. The frustration was palpable, as the community had hoped for closure, a resolution to the haunting mystery. The bones were too damaged to extract DNA, leaving the question of whether they belonged to Mary Day unanswered. The advanced techniques of forensic science had met their match in the ravages of time. The inability to extract DNA meant that the identity of the remains would remain a mystery, at least for now. The discovery, while chilling, did little to shed light on her disappearance. Instead, it only deepened the mystery, adding another layer of uncertainty to a case already shrouded in it. The town was left grappling with more questions than answers, the specter of Mary Day's fate looming larger than ever. Instead, it only deepened the mystery, adding another layer of uncertainty to a case already shrouded in it. The headlines screamed of the new developments, but behind the sensationalism lay a community still haunted by the unknown. The detectives, now more determined than ever, pored over old case files, hoping to find a missed clue, a piece of the puzzle that could finally bring Mary Day's story to a close.